In this tutorial video, we're going to see how to use generics and collections in Java. So you can also use generics on the objects used to manage collections. It's one of the most useful points of generics. For example, when you list the contents of an array list, you are never 100% sure of what reference type you're going to fall upon. So in this first step, we're going to see how to create a generic array list. And in the next step, just to see if you've understood the principle, because it is the same principle across all of the collections, we'll create a generic hash table. So, as I was saying, the Java array list collection can be generified. In other words, instances of an array list can be given a type, so only instances of that type can be inserted and read from that array list. So in this example here, we just have a plain non-generified array list. So to generify it, all we have to do is add this token, so string here and here. So this is basically saying that our array list now only accepts string types. So as you can see, this is why we get an error when we are adding non-string type objects into our array list. So just to remedy that problem, we're just going to add string, so goodbye, and test, for example. Okay. So now that we've inserted our string type objects into our array list, we want to display them using an iterator. Now this also has to have the token string, like so. So notice how it is not necessary to cast the object returned from the iterator next method here, because the array list is generified. So in other words, it has a type, in this case string. The compiler knows that it contains string instances. Therefore, it is not necessary to cast the objects obtained from it, even if it comes from its iterator. So let's run the program now. Like so, as you can see, we'll print out the objects of our array list, like so. Just as a bonus, I'm going to show you another method using a different loop, how to if you want to display the objects of your array list. So I'm going to type it out now. So for line, and then I'm going to print out our variable str, like so. Okay. So this for loop here iterates through all string instances kept in the strings list. So for each iteration, the next string instance is assigned to the str variable that we created here. So this for loop is shorter than the original while loop that we used previously, where you would iterate the collections iterator and call the iterator next method to obtain the next instance. So notice how a string variable, in this case str, is declared inside the parentheses of this loop. So for each iteration, this variable contains the current element. And then we print out that element, that variable, sorry. So let's do that. And as you'll see, it will print out the objects of our array list. So that's how you create a generic array list or a generified array list. In this step, we're going to see how to create a generic hash table or generified hash table. It's the exact same principle as for the array list. As I said, it's the same principle for all of the collection types. So as you can see, we've created our generic or generified hash table. So it only accepts integer instances as keys and string instances as values. So as you can see, if I try to put a string key here, I'd get an error. So for example, hello, as you can see, we get an error. So it has to be an integer, like so. And then we're just simply displaying, in this case, the keys, so with an iterator, as we would normally do. So notice how it's not necessary to cast the object returned from the iterator next method here, because the hash table is generified, so the compiler knows that it contains integer instances for keys. Therefore, it's not necessary to cast the objects obtained from the hash table, even if it comes from its own iterator. So if we run the program, you'll see that we get the key 10 here. So that's how you use generics and collections in Java.